Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the First Parish in Framingham. We are a Unitarian Universalist congregation, and we are a welcoming congregation, which means no matter who you love, how you move around the world, your race, your age, your gender identity, your gender, your beliefs, no matter where you are on life's journey, you, yes you, are welcome here. I'm Andre LaMontagne. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm your worship associate this morning. Please be sure to read the announcements in the order of service, and also be sure to put your phones and other devices that might make noise to their quietest setting. While beeps and buzzes can be distracting, we welcome your human noises, your cooing, your laughter, and your singing. Please join us for coffee and conversation in Scott Hall across the courtyard. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. It takes a lot of courage to try out a new religious community. We look forward to getting to know you better. If this is the religious community you call your own, welcome home. Let us release all that we need to let go of in order to be more fully present to yourself, to one another, and perhaps the sacred in this time and place. I share these words for our chalice lighting, written by the Reverend Joe Lubkin, the Minister of Faith of Formation in Sherborn, Massachusetts. May our chalice flame call us to search our souls, sifting through the past year to see where we may have missed the mark. May its light guide us towards the courageous and open-hearted apology toward repair of relationships in our lives. May its heat warm our hearts to offer forgiveness to those who have wronged us, allowing us to release the chains of grudge and blame that have bound us to them. And may its strength help us take the actions that are within our power to make this next year more just, more loving, and more peaceful for our communities and for all of humanity. Let us rise in body or spirit to sing our opening hymn, 1009, Meditation on Breathing.
Good morning. My name is Dean Arvidsson. I'm the music director here at First Parish. I'm going to show you how to do this piece. Meditation on Breathing, 1009, is in three parts. You'll notice that the top line says melody, the middle line says descant, and the third line says drone. What I'd like is to have all the male voices do the drone for the first couple of times. Then you can sing whatever you want. It gets a little boring. The tenors and basses in the choir will continue doing the drone, however. You guys don't have the option. Okay, so the drone part. Oh, let me finish explaining first. That side over there is going to do the melody section. So you'll be on the top line. I'll bring you in when it's time. All right? And this side will do the descant. And again, I'll bring you in when it's time. All right, what I'd like to do is get the drone started. All right? So I'll teach you this. It's a very difficult part. Here we go. Breathe in, breathe out. Keep it going. Breathe in, breathe. The descant. Breathe in. Melody, I'm sorry. I'll breathe in. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. Again. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. Keep it going. Good. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out. Okay, and now the descant, you've had a hint. Okay, keep it going. Breathe in, I breathe in peace. I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. One more time.
Breathe
Breathe out.
Excellent. I expect to see every one of you here at choir rehearsal next Wednesday.
Now remaining standing, let us sing and say our words of affirmation. From all that dwell below the skies, let songs of hope and faith arise. Let peace, goodwill on earth be sung, through every land, by every tongue. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve all life with compassion, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. This is our great covenant, one with another and with our God. You may be seated. I am the Reverend Aaron Stockwell Wiseman. I am the senior minister of this congregation. I use he, him, his pronouns. And this is the time in our service that we set aside for sharing the things which weigh deepest on our hearts. We share these things because we know that sharing a sorrow can feel as though someone else is carrying our burden. And we share joys because we know that joy shared is joy expanded. We also intersperse into our sharing the singing of Comfort Me, so that our joys and sorrows are held in song, and so that you might have a song to sing when you need it the most. These are the joys and sorrows submitted online and in the book at the back of our sanctuary. Vicki Carrion shares this concern, sending positive wishes and concern to the folks in Asheville, North Carolina after the hurricane. My dear friend evacuated to Florida this week to manage her mental health in the aftermath. Please donate to beloved Asheville. Let us now sing Comfort Me. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, O my soul. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, O my soul. And these are the joys of our congregation. Marianne Orlando shares this joy, which many of you have come up to me and shared this similar joy. A huge shout out to Greg Wells, Karen Greenberger, Eve Benda, Joanne Sarkar, and Lynn Damianos for their work on our anthology, Solitude, Community, and Hope. I got my advanced copy, and it is beautiful and moving. Dev and Dave Doucette write this joy that they're back to church after family visiting last weekend. Sarah shares this joy that Caitlin is 7 today. Now we sing with me. With me, sing with me, sing with me, oh my soul. Sing with me, sing with me, sing with me, oh my soul. And we light one final candle for all of the joys and all of the sorrows that remain too great to share. Let us sing a final verse, Speak for Me. Speak for me, speak for me, speak for me, oh my soul. Speak for me, speak for me, Speak for me, O my soul. And now we move further into our time for contemplation, meditation, and prayer. I invite you to center yourself however you know best, whether that is feeling the feet, your feet, planted on the ground beneath you, a cushion supporting you, or noticing and giving thanks for the strength and support of this community. O Spirit of life and love, named and unnamed, who calls us each by our true first name, which is beloved, we give thanks for the things that bring us joy, for our children, for our community, for our families, for these sheltering walls and the roof above our head. We give thanks. We know too that there are those in the midst of recovery from personal and natural disasters. May we all find strength in community. We know too that there are those who are ill, who are mourning. May they too find strength in gathered community. This world, beautiful on this October morning, also has destruction in it. Wars tear the beautiful fabric of our world. Hurricanes, too. Let us find ways to mend, to bring peace to all of the war-torn parts, to mourn the dead and fight for the living. May all that is holy hear these prayers. I invite you to further settle into the quiet of this space. In a world that has us doing so many things, we have a moment to do absolutely nothing, to sit, to pray the prayers of our own hearts, and to listen.
Reverend Victoria Weinstein writes, "The purpose of the church is to encourage all who gather there to grow more generous in spirit and in action, This is the great end of all the world's faith traditions, to bring the human being closer to the divine by the acts of creation and compassion. We now take an offering that allows us to exercise that all-important generosity of spirit, an offering that will support this self-supporting church and its many ministries. The gifts of the congregation will be most gratefully received. On Turning by Jack Reamer. Now is the time for turning. The leaves are beginning to turn from green to red and orange. The birds are beginning to turn and are heading once more toward the south. The animals are beginning to turn to storing their food for the winter. For leaves, birds, and animals, turning comes instinctively. But for us, turning does not come so easily. It takes an act of will for us to make a turn. It means breaking with old habits. It means admitting that we have been wrong, and this is never easy. It means losing face. It means starting all over again, and this is always painful. It means saying, I am sorry. It means recognizing that we have the ability to change. These things are hard to do. But unless we turn, we will be trapped forever in yesterday's ways. God, help us to turn from callousness to sensitivity, from hostility to love, from pettiness to purpose, from envy to contentment, from carelessness to discipline, from fear to faith. Turn us around, O God, and bring us back toward you. Revive our lives as at the beginning, and turn us toward each other, God, for in isolation there is no life.
This month, our worship theme is transformation. This is one of the new shared values in our Unitarian Universalist Association. There are likely many ways that we can interpret and understand transformation. Our bylaws define transformation with these words: we adapt to the changing world. We covenant to collectively transform and grow ethically and spiritually. Openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian and Universalist heritages, never complete and never perfect. I wonder then, what is fundamental to change? What is necessary for this work of collective transformation? As we are in the midst of the Jewish observances of the days of awe this morning, I want to explore how we might practice and how those practices of those holy days might point us to a path of further transformation. These 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are known as the days of awe, teshuvah, or turning. On the days of awe, Rabbi Arthur Liu explains this: they are days of renewal, days when we are not only concerned with change and transformation, but with reinvigorating, refreshing, and reimagining our days and our lives. Days when we are obligated to ask ourselves a number of difficult and important questions. They are not days about instant transformation, but about working toward transformation and perhaps restoration. Rabbi Liu writes, this is not a linear process, not something that takes a clear nor even easily discernible path. Rather, it happens in times when we might not even notice that it's happening. But the gates are in fact open, and if our intention is aligned with this spiritual reality, then transformation opens a real possibility, even if it doesn't manifest itself right away. The writer Paulo Coelho writes, maybe the journey isn't about becoming anything. Maybe it's about unbecoming everything that isn't really you, so that you can be who you were meant to be in the first place. This journey and this sermon this morning is a sort of choose your own adventure sermon. Pick the tool that will help you in your process of unbecoming or becoming. Perhaps we get to transformation by forgiving. Perhaps we get to transformation by mending. Perhaps we get to transformation by forgetting. What does transformation have to do with forgiveness? A great deal, I think. Now, when I think about forgiveness, I think about releasing a grudge, especially for an action that a person made another feel bad. I am generally a person that forgives pretty quickly. I can usually put myself in the shoes of the other person who wronged me, and I can understand why they behaved the way that they did, and I forgive them. But that's not the forgiveness that is crucial on this day. Elizabeth Lerner Maclay explains, perhaps the most important point according to the Jewish system is that the onus to invoke forgiveness is on the wrongdoer, not the wronged. The wrongdoer is the one responsible for winning any forgiveness that might follow on what they have done. The system is very explicit about what is owed and what must be done. Forgiveness is required in order to be in good standing, pardoned, or absolved of guilt. It is not optional. It is critical. Your life literally depends on it. And that is tricky in my eyes. It means that we have to acknowledge in this life the places where we have come up short, where we have missed the mark, and that is messier work. That requires soul searching. That requires a deep awareness, and we can imagine how that work calls us into greater transformation. I think what forgiveness also means is sometimes that in order to heal, you need to clean the wound. We all know that that can be painful. Anyone who scraped their knee in childhood remembers the antiseptic sting of the cleansing wipe. It stings, it hurts at first. Sometimes the thing that wounded you, that you are seeking healing from, that cannot be the thing that prepares you for further healing. You must search elsewhere. You must clean the wound in order to heal. Transformation, too, by mending. Mending means that we value the piece so much, whether it's clothing or pottery or a relationship, that we will invest the time and the energy in taking those two separate pieces and bringing them back together. The concept of visible mending speaks to me. There's the often cited example of kintsugi, the Japanese art form of mending, where pottery is mended using gold leaf in the lacquer, which means that the mended object can often be more beautiful than the original one. It also means you can see where damage has occurred. My colleague, the Reverend Laura Everett, explains why she finds visible mending to be so powerful. Unlike earlier eras, modern mending is not trying to make the mending invisible, but instead embraces the beauty of visible mending with contrasting colors or patterns. Visible mending gives me a language, she writes, an image for honest repair, instead of pretending that all is well. The poet Jane Hirschfield writes, "There are names for what binds us. Strong forces, weak forces. Look around, you can see them. The skin that forms in a half-empty cup. Nails rusting into the empty places that they join. Joints dovetailed on their own weight. The way things stay so solidly wherever they've been set down, and gravity, scientists say, is weak. And see how the flesh grows back across a wound with great vehemence, more strong than the simple untested surface before. There's a name for it when you see it in horses, when it comes back darker and raised. Proud flesh. As all flesh is proud of its wounds, wears them as honors given out after battle, small triumphs pinned to the chest. And when two people have loved each other, see how it's like a scar between their bodies. Their bodies stronger, darker, and proud, how the black cord makes of them a single fabric that nothing can tear or mend. I once heard the story of a man who decided to reconnect with a cousin. There was no reason that this man could discern as to why he had not been close to this family member, or even that whole side of the family. It was just always the story that the family had told. He'd been a student for a long time of family systems theory, and so he knew that the best way to differentiate himself from the story that had been told was to go and make direct contact. But it never happened. The block in this family seemed to be from a grandfather who prevented his two daughters' families from really getting to know one another. As hospice came in to take care of the grandfather at the end of his life, the two sides of the family got closer. This often happens. And as the two sides came together, and as the grandfather died, and there were more times of sharing afterwards, it became clear that nature rather than nurture had raised two people that were really close. Personality-wise, interest-wise, people who should be friends. Though probably as cousins growing up, they probably would have annoyed each other quite a bit. And so attempts at reconnection would have had that additional baggage. So as 30-somethings, they both thought they had a better shot at developing the loose ties that cousin relationships can have. So they spent more time together, a lunch here and there, dinners every now and then. But the project of mending will never be complete. It will take a while. It depends on hard work and rewriting stories and rewiring ways of being. How do you mend when you don't actually know what the original garment looked like? How do you mend when there really was no original garment? The man hadn't grown up knowing what cousin relationships could look like, either from lived experience or from his family of origin. That project will continue to unfold. Mending still. Maybe then transformation from mending isn't just the possibility of fixing an old garment, but maybe it is the possibility of creating a patchwork quilt from the pieces of fabric instead. Things can be mended and not restored to their original state. The process of transformation is often set with setbacks. Moments when we realize that healing has not completely happened. When we realize that we are not yet as strong as we were, say, before the surgery. When previously we thought we were healing just fine. When we can feel the scar tissue pulling at the skin. Arthur Lew writes about a story where his daughter goes off on a wilderness trip after a really rough patch of teenage years. She has a moment on the trip where she nearly dies. She was lost for 4 days. Sometimes those near-death moments can really clarify things. And then the trip is over and she returns home and everything seems better. Arthur and his wife, they are thrilled. And then it's Tuesday morning, and then it's Wednesday morning, and all of the old ways of being have crept back in. Things are bad, sometimes even worse than they were before. But then 6 months go by. It's also clear that everything has changed. I wonder too if sometimes the process of transformation requires forgetting. We don't often talk about that in church or in society. Sometimes there are things that we simply forget. In a culture that prizes remembering, it feels against the grain to lift up forgetting. Mary Oliver has a poem about this too. It's called Storage. She writes, "When I moved from one house to another, there were many things that I had no room for. What does one do? I rented a storage space, and I filled it. Years passed. Occasionally, I went there and looked in, but nothing happened. Not a single twinge of the heart. As I grew older, the things that I cared about grew fewer, but were more important. So one day I undid the lock and called the trash man. He took everything. I felt like the little donkey when his burden is finally lifted. Things, burn them. Burn them. Make a beautiful fire. Make room in your heart for love. For the birds who own nothing, the reason they can fly." Rabbi Lew writes these words, which seem to respond directly to Mary Oliver. When we feel dead inside, it's often because there are old ideas we no longer believe in or haven't challenged in far too long. Old feelings we really don't feel anymore, but cling to desperately, afraid of what might happen if we admit that we do not feel them. Without our realizing it, these things have suffocated us, crowding the life out of our soul. Sometimes they can be reinvigorated, refreshed, or reimagined, but sometimes they must be removed. We simply let go of them. The altar must be emptied so that the fire can continue to burn. Now, I've been sitting lately with a gorgeous book by Lewis Hyde called A Primer of Forgetting. It was partially inspired by a sentence he read that said oral societies keep themselves in equilibrium by sloughing off memories which no longer have present relevance. He also writes this book after witnessing his mother's dementia. I'm not all of the way through the book, I admit, but what I have read so far is I feel it goes against what we all believe about memory. We think it is a tragic thing, and it is a tragic thing when a loved one starts to have memory loss. We build monuments that say, lest we forget. We teach history so that we do not repeat the mistakes of the past. Lewis Hyde writes, the thought experiment seeks to test the proposition that forgetfulness can be more useful than memory, or at the very least, that memory functions best in tandem with forgetting. To praise forgetting is not, of course, the same as speaking against memory. Any experiment, he writes, worth conducting ought sometimes to yield negative or null results, and mine is no exception. For a long time, I've prided myself on having a pretty good memory, remembering random things or words said. But also having a pretty good memory means that sometimes there are things I don't pay attention to, or things that I have forgotten. Every memory we have that we hold on to likely means that there are several other things that we have forgotten. And that's a strange thing. If I ask you to remember something you have forgotten, maybe beyond where your car keys are, have you really forgotten? Perhaps it is the act of forgetting, which means letting go of something. That means we release the old and have time to create and live into a new identity. So, my friends gathered here, which will it be on our quest for transformation? Forgiving, mending, I don't know what that is. Forgiving, mending, or forgetting. This work of transformation is blessedly never over. It is also the right time to move into this. As Jack Reimer reminds us, it takes an act of will for us to make a turn. It means breaking old habits. It means admitting that we have been wrong. And that is never easy. It means losing face. It means starting all over again. And that is always painful. It means saying, I am sorry. It means recognizing that we have the ability to change, and these are hard things to do. May we have the strength and the courage to do this work. May it be so, and amen. So we are going to do a responsive reading. But responsive readings are challenging because you might not agree or might not be in a place to really truly say the things that are meant for you to say. So this is reading 637 in the back of the gray hymnal. I invite you to take a minute to read over it. And after that minute, those of you who feel comfortable in sharing these words can say them together with me. But have a minute to read. So I will read what is in the Roman type, and if you will read what is in the italics, if you feel moved, that will work. For remaining silent when a single voice would have mattered, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For each time that our fears have made us rigid and inaccessible, we forgive ourselves and each other. we begin again in love. For each time that we have struck out in anger without just cause, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For each time that our greed has blinded us to the needs of others, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For the selfishness which sets us apart and alone, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For falling short of the admonitions of the Spirit, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For losing sight of our unity, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For those and for so many acts, both evident and subtle, which have fueled the illusion of separateness, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. So now I invite you to rise in body or spirit to sing hymn 117, O Light of Life. And so as we leave this friendly place, let us take the light of love out into the world and use it to brighten our pathways. And when we need to rest or recharge, be challenged or affirmed, may that light guide us safely back. May we hold the light always, and the light hold us always. Amen, and go in peace.